what actually happened was that it was perceived as almost a game. And then like it became like I felt it was bad or whatnot, but I didn't have the emotional capacity at that age to know these things. And that's why what you're doing is incredible, because you're empowering the next like generation. Like even what Amy was talking about, like everyone should hit up that podcast because there's so much content. I was having epiphanies. I was like, whoa, this is what it is.
That's awesome.
But then it was also like the fact that, yeah, so it became a repressed memory. And then when I started connecting with more people, I started building more awareness. And then I'm like, no one else has a similar story to me about their mum and their dad and all of this sort of stuff. So yeah, it became, I think that it's your choice. Like some people just distract themselves, but then they might have a midlife crisis and they try and buy external comforts to change internal discomforts.
EQ Gangsters. This episode is sponsored by the EQ Mafia. If you are ready to take your emotional intelligence, emotional fitness program to the next level, join us at eqgangster.com and click on the tab for Join the Mafia. This was such a fun episode with my buddy and actually one of the OG founding members of the EQ Mafia, author and GM of a software company, Alexander Gill, who lives in Melbourne, Australia. He has some phenomenal insights. Definitely recommend checking out his book, Identity: Connect with Your Authentic Being, Know Who You Are, Be Who You Are. Enjoy the episode.
Bro, what's up?
Yes, Noble.
It's so good to see you, brother.
It's fantastic to see you. And I love all the EQ Gangster merch. It's so cool. Like the t-shirt.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. Trying to step up our game here.
Yes.
So, bro, I'm so excited to interview you, man. So for those of you all that whether you're listening on the podcast or watching on our YouTube channel, this is a dear homie who has been literally like the OG of our entire journey, y'all. He is literally one of the originals, and it is so cool that he has been with us through this whole journey of our started out EQ for Entrepreneurs, then transitioned to EQ Gangster. He's in the EQ Mafia, and has just been such a valuable contributor and member and iron sharpener too. There's a verse, Proverbs 27:17, is iron sharpens iron, so big Alex sharpens big Poppy. And so I'm really appreciative of that, brother. Yeah. And so not only is he this GM of this big software company in Melbourne, Australia, he is also, for those of you that are on YouTube, can see me holding up the author of the book Identity. The book Identity, and it is Connect with Your Authentic Being, Know Who You Are, and Be Who You Are. Which one of my tattoos, again, if you're on our YouTube channel, one of my tattoos is "Who are you?" So that fits in perfectly. And thank you for the shout outs, bro. Really appreciate that. So, dude, I'm super stoked to talk to you about this. I took a bunch of notes, got a bunch of questions. I've got maybe 1 or 2 chapters left to go, but what I've been through so far has been fire. And dude, so and a little side note here for those of y'all that are not in the EQ Mafia, it's our safe, supportive, encouraging, equipping membership community where we're all working and growing our emotional health and emotional intelligence. It's really part of an emotional fitness program, and one of these, and there's tons of content in there already, but once a month we bring in a SME, a subject matter expert, and Alex is going to be one of those SMEs, and we're going to have you talk about some of the stuff that you talk about here in your book, whatever you don't cover, obviously in the podcast. But just super excited, Alex. And dude, thanks for your vulnerability and your transparency in your book too, man. You shared some stories. I was like, oh snap. And here's what's crazy. So So I've got a couple of those stories too. So a little bit of a trigger warning, everybody that may be listening to this particular episode. You know, Alex and I may get into some stuff in both of our backgrounds that may bring up some stuff in your backgrounds. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on the podcast, that may, you know, it may bring up some pretty intense emotions. So, you know, if you want to continue with this right now, great. If not, you want to pause it and take a couple deep breaths and maybe do some jumping jacks, or just check in with yourself real quick before you continue on. You know, feel free, however you mentally and emotionally get ready to get into some deep stuff. We may get into that. But when you hit those parts in the book, bro, I was like, oh, it brought, you know, some of my stories from my childhood, and you know, and so anyway, bro, thank you. So excited for you to be here. Can you just share with us a little bit about your background, and then we'll jump into some of the questions and stuff?
Yeah, 100%. I'm excited to be here. And I think we should have like a buzzer or something, Noble, that like we hit, but it's like trigger warning or something like this. And yeah, I'm very excited because like what you've built, like the EQ Mafia and everything like that. Like I know in the book we talk about energy vampires and you know, some people that you sometimes share vulnerability with, and it disheartens you because they don't know, they don't have the capacity, they're not aware how to hold the space. Whereas in that space, everyone's like achieving, they're wanting to grow. That's why they're there. Even though sometimes you may not contribute, you're actually learning through facilitation or seeing others, which I love and appreciate. So yeah, thanks for being here. And yeah, my background's quite an interesting one though, because I went traveling about 9 years ago, and I was supposed to be home within 6 months, and it's 9 years later. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But I first went to New Zealand, and I just started connecting with so many other humans all around the world, and like people from the Netherlands or Holland and just all of these different countries. And I started to learn their backgrounds, and it really started to build self-awareness. I was like, who am I? Where have I come from? So yeah, originally I'm from Wales. So I was born in the capital of Wales, which is Cardiff, and not everyone knows where Wales is. But yeah, it's the people talk like this. They're very much from the valleys, and they're very interesting. And then they're very good at rugby as well. But then we moved to London when I was a couple of months old for my dad's work. And my dad's background is Spanish. So my grandparents migrated Spain after the Spanish Civil War. So not many people know what happened there, but during like World War II, whilst everyone else was doing stuff, Spain was like having an argument with themselves. And then there was like famine, there was loads of stuff going on. So they migrated over to England, met each other there, and then moved to Wales, and they had my dad. So yeah, brought up in London, and it was a beautiful gift, really, Noble, because I got to connect with so many different types of people at a young age. So like for me, I only know there's one race, the human race. I had one friend who was fully English, great guy. And there was no real difference between him and my friend who's Jamaican, or my friend who was Irish, or my other friend who's Italian, or my other friend who's Ethiopian, Somalian, Nigerian, Ghanaian. Like I just realized from a very young age that everyone's got these different stories, but they're meeting their parents. Like we'd have such laughs, you know, some of my African friends would take off their parents, and just like how their style of parenting was different. And, you know, the Italian, like people would bring prosciutto sandwiches to school, and it was very different, but everyone was accepted. And that's what I love about Australia. It's very inclusive over here, that my perception anyway. And I know there's always malice and hurt in the world, but as you say, hurt people just hurt others. That's why they're hurting. And so, yeah, I went traveling, finished university. So I've got a background in film. So I love film and how films can really tell a story. And that's why we often watch them, that we get in that trance phase. So we're just there and we're watching, we're observing. And then, yeah, I came over to New Zealand. I worked there for a while. I was in charge of a whole cinema. So like I did the old school film prints. I was in charge of all of the cinema screens. And then, yeah, came over to Australia, and yeah, just been here for a number of years and love it. And yeah, very fortunate to connect with you guys. And I look forward to coming over to the States once like everything is allowed to open. And yeah, I'm sure we'll probably talk a bit about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. There'll be other things that will come up. But yeah, now I'm 30 years old now. Just trying to, so one of my values I live by, I'm sure we'll jump in a bit about values, but is the concept of eudaimonia. And it's really a human state of flourishing. and it's where you're like pushing your life to the maximum. And we can often get encapsulated by fear and, oh, we shouldn't do this, or the stories we tell ourselves. And I know that you're big advocate on working on those stories and working with those stories, because that cognitive reappraisal, you choose the destiny and the legacy you create, but it's your decision. You could live in that fear state, and that's not eudaimonia because you're not flourishing. Or you can live the other place, be vulnerable, connect with people, share stories, but know the right audience as well, right? Like, we've all been there where we've been vulnerable with someone and they may have just, we've told them something we've never told someone before. And then they just go, oh yeah, right. And so did you see what this TV program on Netflix? And you're like, oh my God, my soul, where have I gone? But in reality, it's like you tell someone who's emotionally intelligent and they're just like, I can imagine that would have been hard. You know, they hold the space. So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey, but I just think EQ is like huge that people should be very aware of. And I love what you're doing because you're spreading the word in such a relatable context.
That's awesome, bro. It's so great hearing you speak, because so many of your things are coming from the book, right? And I love that connection, because for me, it's like it's layered learning, repetition. I need repetition, so hearing something multiple times is super helpful. So, okay, can we go back a little bit? So, and everybody too. Just here's a quick disclaimer as well. You're listening to this awesome guy, author, and again, GM of a software company, Big Alex, who is going to share some very incredible, insightful things, and some game changer things that have been transformational in his own life and in his own journey. Understand, Alex has been on this journey for a long time. This is not, hey, he just discovered EQ last week and all of a sudden he's this EQ gangster, right? And so just be careful about the whole comparison thing and like, well, crap, man, this guy knows stuff that I've never even. Again, that's okay, right? We are at where we're at in our journey, and that's okay. Like, accept where you're at on the emotional map of your life, and just accept it, right? John Maxwell used to say that one of the first responsibilities of a leader is determining where he's at on the map, on the leadership map, and which requires awareness. So just be careful again about comparing yourself to somebody who is maybe a brown belt in Jiu Jitsu, in emotional intelligence here, talking to Alex, or maybe even a black belt. And so, because I know for me, talking to Alex sometimes, even talking to Amy, we had Amy Fiedler on the EQ Mafia last week. And I can fall into that, like, crap, like, how does she know this stuff? How, reading your book, I'm like, how on earth is she making some of these connections? And it's just very easy for me to fall into that comparison game. So just, again, if you're listening and you're like, man, I'm not there yet, that's fine. Like, just be cool with where you're at, and just understand that the journey of emotional healing and emotional health is a process, and it is a journey. It's not an event. It's not a podcast. It's not even reading his book, right? Like it takes, he gives a lot of great practical application here, a lot of how-to stuff as well. So it's not just philosophical, conceptual stuff. He's got some of that in there as well. But I like both. If a book just has philosophical and conceptual and just says, hey, you need to get smarter with your EQ, like, that does nothing for me, because okay, well, how do I do that, right? So just telling me what to do is not helpful for me. So he gives both conceptual, philosophical, and he gives the practical application, which for me really rounds out his book and really helps me. Like, okay, I'm not even done with the book yet, 3/4 way through, and I've already got like very practical, concrete tools that I can add into my emotional tool bag, golf bag, emotional arsenal, if you want to use weapons, and that was going to help me in my EQ journey. And so, and thank you, bro. Thank you for the work that you have done, dude. Again, some of those traumatic things that you had in your childhood, you could have stuffed it. You could have made, the whole, you can make it bitter or better, and you've allowed it to make you better instead of bitter. And thank you for all the work that you've gone through, and all the reflection, and all the non-sexy, very difficult, very hard, sometimes very frustrating, very slow, methodical work of emotional healing and emotional growth, bro, so that we could get, a phase a snapshot in your journey that is a much healthier version than when you were, still very, very, traumatized and had gone through some emotional abuse and stuff. Can you give us a little bit of insight, Alex, into your childhood? Did you have was it, I don't know if you ever heard of back in America, in America here a long time ago, we had a show called Leave It to Beaver, which is this kind of this perfect family and perfect parenting and perfect children, and, just very, very old school kind of straight laced kind of show back in the days. And some in the very small minority, some children have a normal childhood, whatever that means, right? Whatever normal means. The majority of us probably had, and I probably fall into the more Leave It to Beaver category because I had great parents and loving parents, even though we had emotional consequences too for how we were raised. But most people, in my opinion, have a tremendous amount of emotional dysfunction and emotional instability and unpredictability in their childhoods, which has the tsunami effect, right? It has that ripple effect, the compounding effect. What was your childhood like? What were some of your insights, emotional insights and stuff that you had from your childhood? And when did you start to become really introspective of, man, you know what? Okay, let me start asking some questions here because something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't seem right.
It's beautiful because each person's opportunity in life is very unique. So it's not comparing. And I love what you said there. And that's what I've written about, is that Michael Phelps technique of just stay in your own lane. Like Michael Phelps won so many gold medals and he just didn't have time to look in the other lanes, right? And so that's your beautiful gift. And there's a lot of distractions, a lot of notifications. Like we live in this filter fantasy era where people are just posting on the billboard of opinions, their highlight reel, and we can get disheartened. And for me, I'm very grateful for my upbringing, Noble. There's some beautiful characters in my life. Like so my mom and dad, like, I don't remember them like being too ecstatic. Like my dad left at 10 years old. And so I don't remember being too young. I remember my mum says I was a very happy boy. And so like we used to go to Spain a lot, see family over there. And as you know, like family, when they've come from that background, it's very open, loving, giving, like let's dance, let's celebrate, let's eat, let's share. Whereas I found that like this may be the same in America, but British, it's more like we have one plate and we eat our own food and we don't share. We might share garlic bread, which is infused from Italy. You know what I mean? And so it was quite funny. So my mum and dad broke up when I was about 10, 11, I think. And my mum was a single mother. She was working like multiple jobs, things like that, it was tough for her. And I remember I used to catch the bus on the way to school on my own at a very young age. And I remember I missed the stop one day and I was crying profusely to the driver. Because it was quite a big thing for a little boy to be doing, to catch like a physical bus, be around adults, that everyone was like double my height, to press the bell, to know which station to get off. But I had this whole system going where my mum would give me £1 and each like stop was 40p even. So I used to save 20p each day and get like sticker books. So I've always found to see the light in situations rather than going, woe me, I have to get the bus. It's like, no, every 2 days I can buy a sticker book album and it's great. And so bless my mum. Yeah, she's always, she's battled her own thoughts. I feel like growing up, she had mental health problems. And I remember like she talked about this when I was younger. And that really started at the death of my grandfather. So that's like part of my tattoos as well that I have on. That's why I love your tattoos, that it's like stories, right? And it's like reminders. And I wear it as like a badge of an honor on my belly. And then my father, so this is why it's like you learn these life lessons, right? My father was ultimately very stressed, I believe. He moved out. There's a lot going on. Maybe they were stressed about money, but my dad actually got cancer in 4 different places when I was a very young boy. And so like, he was just trying to survive, Noble. Like I remember there was one car journey. We went from England to Wales, which is about 3-4 hours drive. And he kept looking back at me and I thought it was a bit strange. And I remember going over one bridge and it was the Severn Bridge, which connects England to Wales. And my uncle, my godfather, he had a Mercedes, and the windscreen wiper goes like this. So it's just got one wiper. And I remember it vividly, and I didn't know why for so many years. It was like just a memory in my mind. And when my cousin came over to Australia, he told me that my godfather had actually prepared them, going, hey, your uncle Al is probably going to die. So Alex may come and play with us. So please be kind to him and play with it. And I didn't know this until I was like 25 or whatnot. So my dad was like quite severely ill at a young age. But what I found was that if you put your mind to anything, like you can really heal. Like he went home to be with my grandma, and my godfather said he's the only person I know on chemotherapy to have put on weight. So he was eating up all this Spanish food and all these olive oils and all of this sort of stuff. So it was beautiful. Like, I'm not saying all of this to say, oh, woe me or anything like that. There was so many elements. Like I've got beautiful grandparents on my Spanish side that I used to get the plane about like 12 years old. I'd go over to Spain on my own, and it was great. I'd have these summers with them, same as my Welsh nan. Like I love all of that side. But what I just found is that like life is just an adventure, but you've got to reconnect with that child, and that's inner child love, inner child work. But also know that that child has grown up. So if you're 30 years now, your inner child is your 20 and 25-year-old. If you're 40 years right now, your inner child is still your 35, 30-year-old, as well as everything before that. And it's constantly reconnecting. But yeah, I remember some of those memories, and it's quite funny to reflect on. I think I've shared some of those in the book. But it's just going like, whatever's happened in your past, it has no bearing on who you are now or your future. It's the stories that you give power to. And that's why you and I could be sat here and the conversation could be so different right now. But we could be like, oh, this happened, or we could get into COVID mania, or we could get into all of this stuff that's going on. But we just go, you know, life's good. We're just growing, we're learning. And what is the lesson I can learn from this?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And again, thank you for sharing your, a little bit more insights into your childhood. Have you always been like super reflective and super introspective, or was there a certain time or event that caused you, that triggered you to be like, man, I need to start asking myself some deeper questions?
When I started going, so when I used to catch the bus to school in primary school, I used to go to other people's houses. So I would see very different dynamics. So I'd be like, why is your house different? Why is your mum and dad like this? And I used to go to different houses, and like, it was quite an adventure. But then, yeah, just as a trigger warning to everyone on here, and I openly talk about this in the book, like there was a time where I was vulnerable and taken advantage of, that could have triggered more self-awareness, like maybe thinking, hey, this isn't right. But if there's an older boy or a child telling you to do something, then you sort of respect that. It's like, a lot of us in society take what people say to us as truth, but we don't always inspect the fruit on their tree and go, oh, maybe I would listen to your opinion because you've achieved this or whatnot. So it could have started there, to be honest, Noble.
And what age were you at that time period when you were going over to the different friends' houses and all that? How old were you?
I reckon about 9 or 10, to be honest.
Wow. And then that event that you shared in your book there with that other guy, older boy, how were you, 9 or 10? Were you the same age, or how old were you then?
I believe so. Yeah. Because what actually happened was that it was perceived as almost a game. And then like, it became like, I felt it was bad or whatnot, but I didn't have the emotional capacity at that age to know these things. And that's why what you're doing is incredible, because you're empowering the next like generation. Like even what Amy was talking about, like everyone should hit up that podcast because there's so much content. I was having epiphanies. I was like, whoa, this is what it is.
That's awesome.
But then it was also like the fact that, yeah, so it became a repressed memory. And then when I started connecting with more people, I started building more awareness. And then I'm like, no one else has a similar story to me about their mum and their dad and all of this sort of stuff. So yeah, it became, I think that it's your choice. Like some people just distract themselves, but then they might have a midlife crisis and they try and buy external comforts to change internal discomforts.
Okay, say that last one again right there.
People often can buy external comforts thinking it will change internal discomforts.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, masking, right? I mean, heck, I've done that recently. You know, I'll dive into a Netflix series, or I'll eat. You know, food addiction is another thing that I've had to work on, and I'm still in the middle of overcoming. Yeah, we you know, man, you know, why is there so much dysfunction out there? Well, you got all these emotionally injured people with no healthy, productive coping mechanisms. So we're all emotionally injured, walking around with emotional limps and emotionally bleeding and all this stuff, right? You know, we bump into each other and we smack each other, and we wonder why. Like, dude, why'd you just hit me? Well, you know, it's because, you know, that dude got hit by 3 dudes right before he hit you, right? I mean, it's yeah, we have all these emotionally fragile, emotionally injured people with you know, again, with very little healthy, productive coping mechanisms, that, you know, and even in the small chance that they do have emotionally healthy coping mechanisms, a lot of us have never gone back and healed some of that stuff, the crap from our past, that is very likely impacting our present, right? And so, you know, one thing I learned early on as an executive coach is, you know, and I've probably coached, man, I don't know, 100, 200 people over the last 15, 20 years. No, probably 400 people. And 100% of them, and I've coached from 14, 15-year-olds to 75-year-olds, net worths of 20,000 a year to, you know, I don't know, 20, 30 million a year. And 100% of them exhibit behaviors as an adult as a direct result of their childhood. 100% without question, right? And that's just my own little anecdotal research after, you know, a few hundred clients. So it's not a matter of if your childhood is impacting you, it's how and to what degree, and you know, is it serving you, right? How you are behaving, right? Is it serving you? Or, like for me, I was molested when I was 5 years old, right? And I had developed, man, this you know, of course, stuff that repressed it as a survival mechanism is what happens, right, with intense trauma. And I developed this intense, dude, intense hatred of gays, right? I mean, intense, bro. And it was, and I didn't know anything different, right? And then I got molested again in college, and so boom, it just reaffirmed, oh man, I want to kill these guys, right? And then I was with a buddy of mine another army guy, and he's like, hey dude, like, you know, dude, like, you got some pretty strong feelings about gay people, right? You know, and I'm like, well, don't you feel the same way? He's like, dude, you know, he's like, I'm straight, but I've got gay friends, and like, and I don't want to kill them. Like, I have a different lifestyle than them, but I don't want to kill them. He's like, you may want to, you know, kind of check that out. I'm like, you know, I just, at the time I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, dude. And then when I started going to counseling, boom, those 2 repressed memories popped up of when I was 5, and then when I was in college, I was like, oh, now I see why I had this massive, intense rage that was I had pent up, because I never dealt with it. I had no idea how. I didn't know how to process that intense trauma. And so, you know, once you know, God helped me start to heal and work through some of those intense emotional traumas, now I don't have that, the intensity of the emotions gone, right? And that's how you kind of know, one of the ways that you know that you've got healing. This is another thing I super disagree with. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. You know, so one of the misnomers of trauma and emotional injury is time heals all things, right? I think that's the biggest bunch of horse hockey ever. No, that's complete BS. Time does not heal all things. And so how would you answer that? Time heals all things.
I would probably say to you, what would you say next if I said practice makes?
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It makes progress, right? And so like there's so many misconceptions that, in my opinion, from what I've done, And if you stuff and avoid and bottle, it's as like it just comes out as emotional leakage, right? Just like a dam, where like if the dam stops the water and it doesn't filtrate and drip the water out, the water will just keep rising and rising and rising. And what happens? Then it's just a big explosion. You could hit your toe on the table and suddenly F this, F that, blame others, shame others, deny, just living below the line, right? And so I don't think time heals. It just builds more strength on the story. And that's what it does, is it gets more compounding. And that's what happened with me, right? There was just this overarching sense of shame, but it wasn't shame as like Travis Bradberry talks about in Emotional Intelligence 2.0. There's a high, a mid, or a low sense of the emotion. So it was more mortification. It was more all of these emotions that were coming in rather than just going, yeah, time will heal it. Because in reality, it's connection with other people. We're emotional beings that think. So it's the option to connect with others that, you know, thanks for sharing and being vulnerable, Noble, because I know that you've done so much healing and you're on this journey and you can share your heart with other people and communicate because you know how much value it adds to others. Because, you know, if someone comes at you, you're like, I know that we both love Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but it's like someone coming at you trying to attack your guard, and you've got such a good guard now that it's just like, hey, bro, you can't get in because I've done the work. I've communicated about this. I've healed. So I think time can heal if you apply. So it's putting in the practice and getting the reps, not the perfection mindset or the procrastination or she'll be all right. That's what Aussies love to say. There's so many good sayings over here. She'll be all right. And it's like, no, she won't be all right unless if you do the work and the therapy.
Yes, I love that. I love that. You know, and I love that jujitsu analogy. I just rolled with a guy today. Right before the interview, I was at jujitsu, and you know, younger guy, probably half my age, jacked, muscles, same belt rank. You know, he's another blue belt, and uh, and so for I have a little technique I do is I immediately go to my back and just let them. I lay there and let them either take side control or mount, whatever they want to start with, and I let them kind of work their game. And what's been fascinating is, and the reason I do that is because I'm bigger than everyone I roll with. 99% of the people I roll with, I'm bigger than. And it's, you know, I have a little bit of an advantage, obviously, with my size. And so to give them the upper hand, I just let them start with their offensive game. And then I'll work from there. And what's been fascinating is, you know, a lot of these young guys with testosterone and aggression, they come in, oh man, this old guy is just kind of laying down, letting me, all right, I'm going to tear this guy up, right? But I've been doing this for 4.5 years on my back, right? So my defensive game is pretty strong, even though I'm a little blue belt. Like that's how I've been starting for 4.5 years. So like, you know, I'm pretty confident in my defense, and regardless of any level of belt, high level belts and or not, I'm pretty decent at my defense. My offensive game isn't that great, but my defensive game is. But what happens is, just to your point, over time, like he was trying, you know, aggressive and strong and, you know, trying to work all his offensive moves. And I'm, you know, I'm stopping here, I'm stopping it there, moving my hip here, moving my hip there, blocking my neck here. And over time, he started to get frustrated, right? Because I'm not breathing, like I'm speaking of mindfulness, right? It's another thing you talk about in there. I'm I could be talking to you right now, rolling with the guy, right? I stay super calm. I call it OMJ, old man jits, right? It's the old man jujitsu. I'm just super calm. And what's cool is like you, and I love what you said there. With emotional intelligence, if you have been practicing the tools of emotional intelligence, and you have a regular daily emotional fitness program, you can handle any opponent, any emotional opponent. Oh, the COVID mania, everyone's gonna die with COVID. Oh, you don't have a mask on, everyone's gonna die. Or if you don't wear a mask, or you know, whatever the thing is, if you get vaxxed or if you don't get vaxxed, whatever it is, right? Whatever the economy is gonna, you know, we're all gonna go to starvation. Like whatever the thing is, when you have the emotional tools and you know how to roll,
Yeah.
you don't have to. you don't have, even though his energy when he started rolling with me was a 9 or a 10, he comes right. My emotional energy stayed at a 1, maybe a 2, right? Just I was cool as pond water. And that's the power of getting healthier emotionally is you don't have to get anxiety about the present or the future, because you know how to roll with. I know how to. The other day, Wednesday, I rolled with this a guy bigger than me, bro. He was, he's probably 6 foot, but he's probably 280, 290, big dude, bro, and fast, like a wrestler in high school and college and stuff. So like, so big giant dude with some skills and mobility. But I'm cool because I've been doing defense for 4.5 years. You know what I mean? And so, okay, so all that to say, so I love that. Okay, now can you share? I love your kind of along this topic here, following along here, emotional reframing techniques. You have 8 on page 36 and 37. For those you all, again, I strongly recommend again getting his book, Identity, Connect with Your Authentic Being here. He's got, and he talks about kind of the physiology. Alex talks about the physiology of what goes on in our brains as well. But emotional reframing techniques, can you share some of those with us?
And these are ones that I've collected over the years, to be honest, Noble, that I've just like put in there. And just like we talk about triggering into, not all triggers are bad, like if we say a newborn baby laughing, you're triggered into like a happy state because you can see them with no teeth, like giggling, laughing, right? And it's a beautiful way. But these are techniques that I've used that have really, when I'm going through that roller coaster, and one thing I'd love to touch on is the idea of the emotional wave as well. It's like learning to surf, because at the beginning you might be like this, you're like, oh my God, life is fantastic. I've just done this or not. And then in the evening, you're like, oh my God, I'm so depressed. I'm going to have this, I'm going to stick the TV on because it's just how I deal with stuff. But not realizing at the end of that TV program, the same emotion is probably there because you've been in trance phase. So then the next day you might go and do this. So these are like little techniques that I've used to just normalize. So you're more on a wave like this, but knowing that, waves they can come like tsunamis or they can come like a ripple. So there's different types of waves. But yeah, reframing techniques, I have like emotional playlists. So there might be like a song for you. If I ever get disheartened, I play Crazy Town Butterfly. I don't know what it is about the riff, but come my lady, come my lady. It just like, it puts me in a whole different state than like, if I've been telling myself stories and I've not spoke with someone, because especially as a guy, guys like to keep stuff in because we think if we tell someone and we're vulnerable, it shows we are less hard than we are because we want to be hard exterior. Just like this guy that's jacked up trying to attack you, but you're like, bro, it's okay. I've done this because you built techniques. So these are just techniques that I've used. So yeah, the emotional playlist, also cold showers has been so money. Like I remember one day I actually had to go for all these techniques that we'll chat about, but like, jumping in the shower, you're in full control of your body. But like when you are forced into another state, like a cold shower does, your mind cannot do anything but think about how cold the shower is. And so your muscles are tensing up. It's helping your immune system. There's so many different ways that it can help. So they're like 2 like triggering ones that you can use. But then also the concept of I get to rather than I have to. So I get to do my washing up. People in other countries don't get the opportunity to have running water. And so many people are entitled. We think we have real problems. You don't live in a favela or an asylum seeking camp. You have got running water. We have got, many of us, electricity. There's so many, you've got access to, even if you're reading the book, you have the opportunity to have gone on the internet. Like people to forget what the internet was. I remember dial-up, and then you've ordered the book. The book has then come from somebody else in a warehouse where it's come to your house door. You've exchanged means. We're so entitled these days that we actually forget like how much we have. And so to piggyback on the mantra of I get to, goes into gratitude journaling. So I started gratitude journaling many years ago, and there's many different ways. And I talk about in the book just a very simple way to do. If you know, some of the gratitude journals are quite expensive, but they're just simply when you wake up in the morning and write down 3 things you are thankful for. They can be people, they can be events, they can be anything in life. And then at the end of the day, saying what are 3 things that were great. So anything that added value to you. But yeah, and I think lastly to yeah, because there are other techniques in the book, but just moving, like the idea of moving, like I know for me I have to work out like pretty much daily. If I don't work out, I'll go for a walk, because like your body, it's just we are always chasing progress, and like that's the thing, is we're always growing, and you have a decision of who you become, but it's the emotional awareness and that connection and growth into a healthy adult that you want to choose. So yeah, I find, and that's why we both connect, because yeah, you might be building the system where you're laying on your back as well. No, but I love it because I know exactly what, but then you've got like, you know when to use your spurts of energy. So your bandwidth might start like this, and that guy with the muscles starts like this, but by give him like 4 minutes in, he's like here, but you're like probably here. But then it's like you're able to see an opportunity and you'll use that much energy, and suddenly the game is yours. And the thing is, life is a game, but it's knowing how much you are entitled and how well life is good for you. So yeah, just gratitude journaling, some of those other techniques that we spoke about.
That's awesome, bro. Another thing that you mentioned in the book that I thought was super powerful to kind of piggyback off of the jujitsu analogy there, since we're both jits guys, so I'd like to let's
Hey, and
use.
successful people are jiu-jitsu, you know, look at Jocko Willett, like people love it. It is a metaphor for life, a black
That's
belt to a
right.
white belt who never gave up.
Joe Rogan,
Yes.
is uh,
Yeah.
Russell Brand.
Yeah, yeah.
He's a
Tom
purple belt,
Hardy.
bro.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Tom Hardy. Tom Hardy, he actually trained at Fort Bragg with some of the special forces guys that were some of my instructors. Yeah, they said he was a super good dude. Uh okay. Man, you have so many great. I'm pulling a Jocko Willink actually. This is how he does some of his when he interviews authors, he has the book out and reads off of it. So a couple of things, man. You had some great questions in there. And as you know, I'm a question addict, so I love some of your questions. Um, okay, so we're the CEOs who answer to our stakeholders.
Yes.
So, what are the steps you will take to increase your self equity? I thought that was a great question. What are you choosing to believe and adopt as your own mentality? And a piggyback off of that, kind of that you alluded to before. What are our stories and beliefs that we're not even aware of that are dictating our behavior? Right, like you said, stuff that I didn't even have to think about. Practice makes, and well, perfect, right? I didn't have to think about it, but again, I agree that that's not accurate. You know what I mean? But how many of those kinds of things do we inherently accept and believe that are in our operating system that dictate our behavior that are not even accurate? But it's like I think I know how to do an arm bar, but I'm not. My knees aren't tight. And it's
Yeah.
like, man, everyone's escaping, or I'm not locking up my triangle. Well, man, everyone triangles don't work. Well, no, actually they do work. It's just you don't have the proper technique, right? Another one. When was the last time you felt you were thriving or flourishing? I want to hit folks with that again. That's another great question you have in the book here. When was the last time you felt you were thriving or flourishing? Man, I think that's such a powerful question that I don't know that we think about that kind of thing enough. That's such a powerful question there. Okay, the other thing too that I wanted to hit that I thought was so okay. Here's another one. What are my emotional drivers? You asked that on page 22. What are my emotional drivers? I thought that was super powerful. Another one you have on the next page. Who are you performing for?
Yes.
Another dude, powerful one that again, I don't think many of us think about. And before I forget, because I want to get onto this other one here I'm just jumping. You had a comment in here. Oh man, you have so much good stuff, dude. What? Why did we not question the system? How much are we questioning? And again, to kind of even go off of that, how much of my own beliefs or stories or scripts or narrative am I questioning and not questioning? What am I accepting as truth that maybe not be like again, for me, one of my defaults is when I get any kind of emotion, positive or negative, or I shouldn't say positive or negative, pleasant or unpleasant, my default is, let me go look in the cabinet. Let me go look in the cupboard. Let me go look in the refrigerator. Like, it's like that is how I process emotion. Almost is like I got to eat something in order to even, right. So that's not a healthy, that's not a healthy response there. But one of the things that you said, and I'm not finding it here, so I'm just going to tell it to you, that I think is so important for people is you said something like when you can, something to the effect of, you can have a richer life and a healthier life when you like live with or embrace the fear and the pain versus avoid. For me, I stuffed and avoided the fear and the pain and the discomfort emotions and stuff, uncomfortable emotions, for 98% of my life, again, until 4 years ago. Because my counselor said, when I was in a valley, he asked, "Hey, how are you doing?" I had a session with him. I said, "No, I'm not doing good." I said, "Well, so give me some tips to get out of it." And he's like, well, why? I'm like, "Well, what do you mean, why?" I'm like, "I want to get out of the valley." He's like, "Well, why do you want to get out of the valley?" I'm like, "Dude, because it's a freaking valley. Like, what are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, but," he's like, "What beliefs do you have about valleys?" And I was like, "They're bad." He said, "Why?" I'm like, "Dude, what are you talking about?" What? Right. And so your book made me think about that. Like, why are, like, it just reinforced, like, if we reframe a valleys can be a learning opportunity, right? So how do you approach life's valleys?
It's a good question, Noble. And I like what you were talking about there with the fear and the pain. And I think a huge concept to accept is acceptance. So it's just acceptance. I am here right now. But like you were saying, there's no point judging it, because you have to have the valleys to have the peaks. But the beautiful part is that you might go through the valleys, right? And they can suck, they hurt, there's so much pain. You think it's the end of your life, the world. These are the stories. But when you're around the right people and you share, and they're emotionally intelligent and they're like able to hold space, that valley isn't that bad anymore. But the next peak is so much higher than the last peak. And this is what I've learned, that it's about those peak moments, but it's the humility and where you share those peak moments with other people. Hey, man, do you want to come and join this ride? I'm on this peak right now. And that's how they last longer. And so it's all concepts of, I write about the healthy adult as well, with that self-awareness. So the self-awareness as well as the self-compassion, and then also belief. Like, the self-awareness is a constant journey. Like, I'm always trying to be self-aware, like even verbiage, like what am I saying? Because it's so subconscious. When you cut yourself, your body is always healing. When you're asleep, your body is still healing. Your subconscious is still on. Your automatic nervous system is working for you. But what do we tell ourselves that keeps working behind the pillars, behind everything that we're saying? So, yeah, I think that the premise of the word adversity, if you break down the word adversity, it is to add, it's addition. And then there's a verse. So it's either a verse of a song, or like Hadouken, like, oh, Hadouken, like Tekken, like verse against. And then iti is to make it a noun. So it's like you are adding a verse to your story, but you are choosing the verse. You can think life is happening to me or through me, because everything is a lesson, right? But, sometimes you don't understand what the lesson was. Like, when I was, things that had happened to me, like even when I was T-boned off a scooter and I was in so much pain, the story changed, all of this, I was in such a bad state. My mind was so scattered. And I found that speaking about it over a beat, like I love hip hop and all of those things, helped. But it was actually like just accepting I am here right now and this is the choice, but it's your own solution mindset that you build. How do I get out of this? When you're in a swimming pool and you're in the middle of the swimming pool, you don't suddenly go, I'm just going to quit. I can't get to the side. I'm just going to lay here. Someone will help me. You go, how am I going to get to the side? Do I use front crawl? Do I use backstroke? Do I use breaststroke? How do I get there? And you do it. And then you get to the side, you get out and you're like, whoa, that was hard. That was good. Or you go, hey, I might just want to get back in. So now I perceive adversity as an equal or greater benefit, but it's your perception, and it's always perception. And that's what there's some tools in there about how to get through adversity, because it's always on the perception level. And it's always like, you know, when like you see a child and they're crying over something and you're like, hey, it's not that bad. That's their perception. That is their world for the day. If their lollipop fell on the floor, that is dramatic. And I even see that with my grandparents. Like the car breaks down and that's a big day for them, bless them. You know, it's just your perception.
That's awesome. And one thing I was thinking about is what impacts our perception is our preparation,
Yes.
right? Preparation impacts perception. And so for example, you know, when using jujitsu, if I'm going up against a 4th degree black belt, you know, probably a year or two ago, I'm shaking in my boots. Like when I first started at the gym, it was about 6 months before, and I was a brand new blue belt. I was maybe a year old blue belt when I got to this gym that I'm in now, and it took about 6 months, and my professor was like, "Hey man, let's roll." And dude, 4th degree black belt. I was like, but he's literally half my size. He may be a $150 soaking wet, right? And I'm 250, 260 probably right now. And so I got him easy by 100 pounds. But I was like, I'm gonna get destroyed, right? I was terrified, shaking my boots, right? But after another year and some change of again, starting from my back, going up against big giant guys, little guys, fast guys, black belts, purple belts, white belts, all the belts. Now it's like, now I don't have an expectation of tapping him, right? But I also don't have a fear anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have again, my perception of rolling with a 4th degree black belt. Let's go. Like it's for me, it's an amazing learning opportunity. It's not a trauma event. You know what I mean? Which again, so let me ask you, so is that a legit point that preparation impacts perception?
100%.
Okay, so you believe that?
Power. Yeah.
Okay.
Like it's like anything. If you think about it just logically, yeah, like if you have built these tools for adversity, when the next adversity comes your way, you still have to have the self-compassion, because we're often human doings rather than human beings, and we can beat ourselves up in this. It depends how big, like, I mean, I know you and I spoke about this, and like I'm a recovered people pleaser addict and a caretaker addict, an energy jeopardizer addict. I wanted the world to be such a beautiful place, but it's in realization that you are enough and you are worthy and you do matter. So you've got to prepare yourself for the road ahead. And that's what I think I was listening on one of your other podcasts. Like, I think there was a great lady who talked about like working with children, and it's preparing the child for the path, not the path for the child. And that's that whole preparation mindset.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And that's my, even reading your book, right? So some of your, how where you've landed on some of the things that have happened in your life. I'm like, wow, man, that's, this dude has done some work to land where you have landed, and to watch you, right? Because I get to interact with you on a fairly regular basis, on a monthly basis at least. And if and oftentimes a couple times a month with the EQ Mafia, and I always enjoy hearing your insights and perspectives. And here's again, to wear out the jujitsu. I love rolling with. There's a black belt at our gym he doesn't compete, because he's just, I don't know, he just doesn't compete, but he is an assassin, bro. He is a killer, but he's not in the circuit. But dude, I'm very confident he could compete at ADCC. He could compete at the high levels, man. He's a high level black belt. Well, so we've got an Olympic, a Greco-Roman bronze medalist, Olympic, and he's a second degree black belt. He's 6'4", 6'5", 240, jacked, like not with all my extra fluff and real estate, right? He is jacked muscles, and second degree black belt, bronze Olympic medalist, Greco-Roman wrestler. And this black belt that I'm talking about is a wonderful, regular black belt, and is probably a buck, maybe he's a $190. And dude, he almost taps. I've watched him roll a couple times, and he's almost tapped this big behemoth, second degree black belt, Greco-Roman, Olympic athlete two or three times. And it's just like, so interacting with you on these EQ Mafia calls, I love interacting with and learning from people that are higher belts than me in emotional jiu-jitsu, right? Because you've done just a lot more work. In your journey, what have been some of the, we already talked about some of the emotional framing techniques and stuff, and you got the 3 Ps, you got the 4 As, you got some really neat things in your book there for folks to be able to apply and use in their own lives. What have been some exercises or tools that have made some of the biggest differences in your emotional growth journey?
It's a really good question. I think self-compassion's been huge, because I used to be very critical. And so there's many ways to do that, but it's also harnessing your thoughts. So I know that I touch on mindfulness, but knowing how your thoughts work. Say you and I are next to a super highway and there's 10 lanes and we're sat on the side and we're just watching. There's a white car that comes past and we watch the white car and it's going past. It goes out of sight. Then a yellow car comes past and we watch that and it goes out of sight. Suddenly there's multiple cars, but we choose to focus on the white car again and we follow it. It will go out of sight. You are in control of your thoughts and the thoughts that you give power to. For myself, I used to be very hooked, just like a fish gets hooked. I used to be hooked on that thought and then continue to think about the thought and give power to that thought. But know that you're in control. And that's why there's certain exercises, like physical sport, can help get emotion out. Like football, as in what I call football, like your foot on the ball, you probably call soccer. And golf, it's like you hit something, so you get aggression out. It's probably similar with baseball. But then knowing that swimming and running and cycling are very meditative. So when I was going for a tough time, I went swimming every day. I used to do quite a lot of lengths. But when you swim, you get to the other end and you have to think about turning. You can't think about your thought that you've been. So it empowers you to have that thought exercise. That's been a big one. And there was another one that came to mind that as a recovered people pleaser addict, I used to, as soon as somebody said something, I would try and I couldn't get compliments. If you gave me a compliment, I had to throw it back at you. And it's quite a strange thing that certain people, if they don't really understand, they're like, what is this guy on about? This talking bearded egg? What is he doing? But in reality, it's you have to accept and you have to just know, the whole book's premise is to know who you are. I didn't know who I was until I went through all of this work. So that's why I've just tried to give this to the world and go, right, here's many of the exercises and I use. But fulfillment techniques, there's many ways that your brain can work, meditating, writing out your values. Even writing down your name 100 times is quite an interesting technique, because you may get to a certain point and you're like, I'm bored of this. Why am I writing? And you're like, no, I like my name. I've got a strong name, because Noble Gibbons is a strong name. Alexander Gill is a strong name. When you say your whole name, it's your personal brand. It's your identity. Back in medieval times, there was Alan Goldsmith, he was very good with gold and smithing, or there was this person who was a good, and that's where our names came from, right? But it's knowing who you are, living through your values. I think values living and alignment is what's really helped navigate. So this whole premise of like thoughts and this whole premise of like self-acceptance and this whole other premises, they're all encompassed outside of knowing your values. So if you value health, then you wouldn't necessarily do things that are incongruent, because it hurts your character and your self-esteem. And it's like keeping a contract with yourself. So I think that they've been some exercises, and they're forever growing, they're forever evolving. It's not like I've reached the destination. And you may call me this EQ belt, but I also see you because you've been through so much journey and you help so many people. You empower and teach. Like, this podcast is so valuable. Like, if people go back and they look at certain podcasts, there is so much incredible content with masterminds that you've connected with, and they're there forever. They're a timestamp in time. But it's knowing what you value, right? There's certain people pick up different techniques, but yeah, I think they've been someone's for me. And what about yourself, Noble? Has there been techniques for you that you use that you'd love to share?
So yeah, and thank you for asking. That was great, by the way, too. So the one that I am still consistently working on is my self-awareness. I still think, well, not I think, I know, like, it's so funny. I just did, I posted on Facebook a couple weeks ago and on LinkedIn my wins for 2021.
Yes.
Right. And then two weeks later, I posted my failures. Right? and I've got a truckload, right? Because I don't want people to think that I have this Instagram lifestyle, right? That, part of life is accepting I've got this, well, the EQ assessment, right? That one of the aspects of emotional intelligence is reality testing. Yes. And if I also have overcome toxic positivity. I had that also, where, right. Oh, your arm is about to fall off. It's bleeding and you're bleeding out. Oh, but it's, you're fertilizing the ground and you're making the grass grow, like, no, dude, help my arm. It's like actually falling. Right. And so, but because I had no self-awareness, I wasn't able to process the emotions that would come from looking at reality objectively. So my coping mechanism was toxic positivity. And so for me, I'm wanting to get better at acceptance, what you said, just accepting where I'm at on the map emotionally, in whether I'm in a valley, a peak, a valley, or somewhere in between, and just accepting it. This is where I'm at, and what am I supposed to learn in this moment? And again, you've got some great questions on how to reflect, like, some good reflection questions. And I think it's important. Again, it helps to reframe the valley that we may be in. What are we supposed to learn? Like, the last thing I want to do. So, okay, if you tap me out 5 times in a row, I don't want to not learn the lesson. Like, how do I get, like, I want to learn from these 5 taps that I just got, these 5 valleys that I just got from Alex Roland. Okay, so what can I do to get, only get 4 taps next time, and next time 3 taps, and right. And so valleys, anyways, that's for me. I'm wanting to get better. Well, and the emotional regulation, there's a lot, man, that I'm working on. Consistency is a big one too. I'm really working on my mood meter app that I tell a lot of people about, right? Using my executive clients. Mood meter app is really good, but I'm using it for myself. And this is something I was thinking about today in the shower. Is I don't want to get wrapped around the axle on my emotional belt that I'm at, right? Oh, I'm an emotional blue belt, or I'm an emotional, purple belt with 3 stripes. Like, no. I want to embrace and celebrate and recognize the effort that I'm making, right? Am I only going to jujitsu class once a month? Okay, well, I can't have an expectation that I should be this jujitsu animal if I'm going to class once a month, right? If I'm only working on my EQ once a month, well, don't have this expectation that your healing is going to, your emotional fitness, you're going to lose 50 pounds of emotional fat in a month if you only do 1 emotional exercise a month, right? So I'm working on being more emotionally consistent for me to increase my awareness, because in the past my default is oh, I'm starting to tap emotionally. Let me go. Let me go eat. Let me go to the cupboard. Right. Let me avoid. Let me watch Netflix for however many hours so I can avoid processing these emotions that I'm feeling. Anyway. So that's the stuff that I'm really working on. So let me ask you this, Alex. What did you learn about yourself from writing the book?
That's money. That's huge. The Whatever you set your mind to and you believe you'll achieve. Like, I'm an average guy who went traveling. But if with consistency and effort, you can achieve whatever you set your mind to. That's exactly what I did when I entered ADCC. There's things that you can do that they might be uncomfortable. And I love that point you said about toxic positivity, because when we were talking about adversity, it's like accepting, right? It's not going like you were saying, my arm's chopped off, it's fertilizing. It's no, dude, sit in it. You lost an arm, So I think through the writing process, I really discovered and re-solidified all of these points and this what I've created and everything that is around me. And that's why I talk about the 4 A's, because like you have to be authentically you. Like you can't be a second grade anyone else. Like your dream that you showed up on this planet to produce is so unique to you. So it's the idea of the mantra that I am becoming, but it's having enough self-awareness and self-compassion and belief that you will get there, just giving yourself time. So yeah, throughout the journey it was quite interesting. It radiates out into the way you do anything is the way you do everything, Noble. So like just consistency. And people are like, they might say I'm writing a book or I'm doing this, and I found the publishing side even bigger. But like the whole premise that you have to keep at it, and the way you write a book is one paragraph a day, and you can do it in a good couple of months. But it's just knowing what's our distractions, what are our drivers, what do you want to leave on this planet. Because for me, it's planting as many seeds and not expecting to live in the shade. And it goes the same as one single candle can light 1,000 candles, and the life of that candle is not shortened. Happiness isn't shared, isn't decreased from being shared. And you know who said that? Buddha. It's treating life like a buffet, taking from it what you want. And when we go to a buffet, we don't chuck everything on there and try and eat everything at the same time. We take what we want and need, but we might revisit the buffet and might see that. And I've finished writing the second book, which is all about the delusion of happiness. And it's quite an interesting concept, because I think happiness is an overarching theme that we are often distracted. We need to buy this because we're happy, or we need this because our life is more comfortable. But you're actually comfortably perishing. If you're not progressing, you're regressing. And it's just like people are often like babies, like we're just big babies that have grown up, right? So that's why we love that routine. But it's actual like just going out there and knowing what happiness is for you. Because when I ask many people, they're just like, just to be comfortable, just to get by, just like, and it's like, you're not born for the fun of it. Like you've got greatness inside of you, but it's your opportunity and your eudaimonia of your life to choose. And so you can live in the comfort zone and wherever you'll get there. And there's people that choose it, and that's okay. But if you are like, that's why I respect you so much, Noble, because you're always doing something and you're always giving, you're always sharing. Like this whole podcast, it's just a share to the world, and thousands of people log in to listen because they're like, I actually respect the content. And so that's the beautiful aspect that, yeah, throughout the book, I learned more about myself, because the whole premise is just being your authentic self. But also you have to embody everything that you write. So everything that I wrote, it was I was being accountable and living through all of these states. But yeah, just check in with your attitude, how you perceive life, because there's either victims or there's victors.
Love it, bro. So I would say, as a whole, I do not have a victim mentality. However, I wonder. I want to challenge that thought with, I wonder if I have certain aspects of my life that I have a victim mentality, right? So maybe not overall, I'm not a victim, but I wonder if I were to do some deeper dives, if I'm doing some blaming or some, right? Because anytime where we're blaming, it's the victim role. And
Yeah.
so, do I have aspects of my life where I am blaming consciously or subconsciously somebody else, something else for where I am at or where I'm not. Okay, well, I need to do some deep dive. So that's do great thoughts there, Alex. So how do we find you? How do we follow you? How do we get your book? How do we get your second book? Tell us how do we find you? Connect with you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the book's out on all platforms, so Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Booktopia. You can follow me on Instagram, so it's alexander.e.gil, and that's with one L-G-I-L. Yeah, and then there's also a Facebook group called Identity Book. So it's got a picture of a thumbprint, and yeah, there is a website as well, so alexandergill.com.au, and I'll be putting up there how you can pre-order the next book, which will be part of a 3-part series as well. alexandergill.com.au.
All right, alexandergill.com.au. Now, do you speak Spanish?
A little bit. I can understand more than I speak from the years I used to go to Spain. So I used to observe, but it's funny because those stories that maybe I felt a victim, that I didn't want to learn Spanish because I didn't want to be different when I went home. So yeah, I would still love to learn a lot more. So yeah, I'm going back to Spain this year to see my family, which I'm very excited about.
That's awesome. Where are they at in Spain? What are they close to?
Southern part. So if you know Alicante, which is like, yeah. So between Alicante and Murcia, my grandparents used to live in Torrevieja. And then if you go inland, there's all of these small southern towns. So Orihuela, El Moradi, Callosa de Segura. So shout out to any of my primos that might be listening to this.
That's right. That's awesome. My cousin worked, he was in the Air Force, and he worked in the naval base down in Rota, Spain. And then we with a very, very southern tip there. And we got a chance to travel all that, a little bit of the southern area and stuff. It I miss that. I miss Spain, dude. It's beautiful, beautiful. Bro, thank you so much. Absolutely life-changing. Totally appreciate you, bro. Thank you again for your wisdom, your insights, and again, just being a part of this, being a part of my EQ journey, letting me be a part of your EQ journey. So appreciate you, brother.
No, thank you, bro. Thanks for having me on, and yeah, thanks for being you. Like, keep shining bright, Noble. You're impacting many and just guiding and just adding value. So thank you.